After buying a new house and finishing moving our stuff, suddenly another moving truck stopped in front of the house. Then my husband dropped a bombshell. From today, my parents will live with us, too. What? My in-laws said, if you're against it, such a wife should get divorced. I burst out laughing when I heard this. It's pretty much like we're already divorced, isn't it? Huh? This is the story of when I left my husband and his parents right after we moved into the new house. I'm Yvonne, a housewife in my 30s. I married Michael 5 years ago, and our son is now 4 years old. I quit my job when we got married, but I returned to work full-time on weekdays when our son turned 4. Although Michael was kind and laid back when we met, and though he was a bit clueless at times, I thought that was just part of his character. Above all, I was attracted to him because he seemed to put me first at that time, and we got married. However, it turned out that my compatibility with my in-laws was not good at all. They were the kind of people who cared too much about appearances and had a one-sided way of thinking without considering others. I first sensed trouble during the preparations for our wedding. They wanted a grand wedding because he was the eldest son. I wanted a modest wedding with only close relations, but they said that would be embarrassing and not suitable for their family's status. Let me tell you, Michael's family is not that grand. His dad is a retired regular employee, and his mom is a homemaker. They don't have a big house, and they've always lived in rentals instead. But they seem to want to keep up appearances. Eventually, they said they would cover the costs and went ahead to book a wedding venue they knew without asking us. I didn't want to start a fight before we were married, so I went along with my in-laws' wishes and had a grand reception. But as a result, my in-laws contributed to the costs for only the groom's side. The financial burden for the bride's side ended up falling on my family. It was the same when I gave birth. While enduring the pain of labor at the hospital, my mother-in-law arrived and immediately said, "What, still not born? I thought you'd already given birth since you said labor started. I came all this way for nothing. Ah, this is so boring." And she kept up a stream of trivial chit-chat beside my bed. Of course, I was in too much pain to care, but she didn't mind and kept on, "Hey, Yvonne, are you listening?" During such times, my husband, Michael, didn't say anything to his mother, just watched. I used to like my husband's laid-back nature before we got married, but in situations like this, it felt more insensitive. No, actually, it seemed like he just took his parents' attitudes for granted as normal. And after giving birth, thoughtless behavior of my mother-in-law and father-in-law continued. Despite it being just after childbirth, they'd insist on celebrating at our house, staying up late drinking and making noise, and even demanding, "Hey, get some snacks ready." No one would soothe our crying son. With this kind of behavior, I found it hard to get along with my in-laws and kept our interactions to the bare minimum. However, a certain incident made me engage more deeply with my in-laws. Our family of 3 lived in a rental apartment, but our son grew big. So, we started considering buying a new house. But building a house meant searching for land, consulting with construction companies, and deciding on interiors, which required numerous meetings. Since we both worked weekdays and were busy, we scheduled our meetings for weekends. However, with our son together, it was hard to have long meetings, so he was often looked after by my parents, who lived nearby. We had planned another meeting for tomorrow, but my mother called to say she had caught a cold and didn't want to pass it to our son, so she couldn't take care of him. I thought about canceling the meeting or taking our son with us and discussed it with Michael, who suggested, "Why not leave him at my parents' place for once?" I wasn't keen on relying on my in-laws. But without considering my opinion, Michael started calling them. "Hey, it's me. Can you take care of our son for the day tomorrow? We'll bring something nice as a thank you." I said, "It's not right to spring this on them suddenly," but my oblivious husband just said, "It's all good," and hung up. I had a bad feeling about this. On the day, we took our son to my in-laws in the morning and then went to our meeting. On the way back, we brought some sweets that my in-laws like, and I wanted to leave as soon as possible, but as expected, we got caught up. "So, you're building a house, huh?" What kind of house is it? My father-in-law asked. And a built-in kitchen, huh? Nice, young folks these days cut corners with it, my mother-in-law added with a dog. Then Michael said, I've left everything about the kitchen up to Yvonne. My mother-in-law went and looking at me, she said, must be nice. I'd like to use a nice kitchen myself. So I tried to be polite and suggested, maybe you could remodel your kitchen? To which she replied, as if we have the money for that. I'd rather have some parental respect and get a remodel as a gift. Seeing this, Michael carelessly said, well, once our place is finished, you should come and see. You can even use it if you want. I really didn't like the idea of someone else using my kitchen, but after being questioned about every little detail of the new house, we were finally freed 2 hours later. On the way home, feeling anxious, I asked Michael, hey, your dad and mom seem really interested in our house, but we're not gonna live together, right? He replied, no, it's our family's home. Didn't I say you could do whatever you like with the kitchen? So, I chose to believe him. From that day, my in-laws started offering to watch our son during our meetings. While I appreciated the help, they always ended up giving their opinions on the house. My father-in-law demanded, let me see the blueprints, and asked, how big is the bathroom? How spacious is the guest room? He'd even said, you should install handrails at the entrance for when we get older. My mother-in-law suggested, this room should be a Western-style room for more comfort, and asked, how high is the kitchen counter? When I told her the height, she'd say, oh, that's too high for me to use comfortably. When she suggested, you should make it a bit lower, I couldn't help but say, I made it at a height that's comfortable for me. Then my father-in-law said, it's not just you using it. Michael will live there too, so you have to think about what's comfortable for everyone. Who on earth would design it for the occasional visitor? Looking for help, I turned to Michael, but he didn't argue back and just went along with what they said. Whose house are we building here? Because of such exchanges every time, I get tired. So, I suggested to Michael, can we stop leaving our son at your parents' place? And I'm also having trouble with them always chipping in about the new house. But Michael dismissed it, it's a big help that they watch our son, isn't it? A few complaints here and there are nothing. You're the wife, so just put up with it. I pressed further. But, your parents are really pushing their opinions too much. It's like they're planning to live there themselves. We're not going to live with them, right? Then, Michael almost snapped. I said it's gonna be our family home, didn't I? Stop nagging. If you're gonna keep this up, then it's divorce. Divorce. What is he even talking about? It was his parents who suddenly butted in about the new house. Yet, why is it turning into a discussion about us divorcing? But from that day, Michael's threats of I'll divorce you only increased every time something came up. On another day, after a meeting, my in-laws came to our house and started discussing the new house again. Hey, maybe you should change the location of the bathroom, my father-in-law suggested. My mother-in-law chimed in, yeah, maybe move it here? Why don't you ask the architect to change it now? And Michael was ready to make the call. Finally, I said, this has already been decided. Then my father-in-law got angry. How dare you, a mere wife? You don't understand anything about houses, so you should listen to what your elders have to say, he yelled. My mother-in-law added, exactly. We're just trying to give you good advice. Far from helping me, Michael said, right, let's consider their advice. It's a good opportunity. My father-in-law even looked at me and said, hey, Michael. Couldn't you find a more understanding wife? Come on, Dad, don't say that. Look, Yvonne, apologize. Otherwise, it's divorce. What? I thought this was the end. Despite my efforts to avoid my in-laws because we don't get along, lately, because of frequent interactions, Michael has become more inclined toward his parents' side, offering me no support at all. The kind Michael I knew is gone, replaced by a husband who's become a puppet for his parents. When we decided to build a new house, I was excited about our future life together, but now, every meeting is a trial, and talking with my in-laws afterwards is hell. And if I try to talk to Michael about it, he always threatens we're getting divorce. One time, I couldn't tell if he was joking or serious, but he even put a filled-out divorce form in front of me. You're way too harsh on my parents. They're just trying to give advice. And they take good care of our son, don't they? If you keep up this attitude, I'm seriously gonna consider divorce, he said. I was dumbfounded. It hit me that he will always side with his parents, no matter what. He says his parents are taking good care of our son, but that's only when we have meetings. It's actually my parents who really look after our son. They step in when the daycare calls unexpectedly, or when I'm sick, they come over to help, and they always have gifts for his birthday and Christmas. My in-laws have never given him anything. Instead, they demand, bring this as a gift for us, whenever we visit. He doesn't understand anything. After much thought, I visited my parents' house. I must have looked worn out because my mom immediately asked with concern, "What's wrong?" I decided to open up about everything. Then my mom said, "You can always come back home if you need to." Hearing that, I felt relieved. Right, there's no need to cling to that family out of obligation. It's up to me to decide. But, I have a son, and we're in the middle of building a house. But at this rate, it might only be a matter of time before my in-laws take over the new house. Will I have to endure abuse and be used by that family for the rest of my life? I can't stand the thought. But if I bring up divorce now, Michael will likely reject it. Despite all his talk of divorce, that family cares too much about appearances, so getting a divorce from Michael won't be easy. That's when I came up with an idea. And started preparing for the worst-case scenario. Finally, our new house was completed, and today, Michael, our son, and I came for a walkthrough. Our son was running around excitedly, exclaiming, "Yay! Our new home!" The new house had that fresh smell, and it felt like my dream home had finally been realized. Michael and I had a brief meeting about the move. The second floor has a guest room and what will be our son's room. But since we won't be using them for a while, I thought we'd use them as storage space for now. I told Michael this, but all he said was, "Make sure you tidy up the boxes." Really? There's no rush, I replied, though I already had my suspicions about him at that point. Then, on moving day, we carried in our belongings as planned and started unpacking. Expecting a busy day, we had left our son at my parents'. But soon, I noticed Michael was missing. When I looked for him, I found him on the phone saying something. What? You're coming now? It's not tidy yet. Hearing this, I thought, oh, my in-laws are coming over again. But then, I saw a moving truck stop in front of our house from the window. Huh? Did they forget to unload something? I wondered, but then the doorbell rang. When I answered, my in-laws were standing there. With their own belongings in tow. Just checking if you've settled in, and they barged in, saying, "Oh, it's still a mess?" Typical Yvonne, just can't manage. Behind them, movers were holding protective covers, asking, "Hello, can we start the work?" Work? What work? I thought, but the in-laws told the movers to begin, and suddenly they started moving into our house. "Hey, what's happening? What's this about?" I demanded from Michael. "Cool as a cucumber," he replied. "Oh, we're going to live together from now on. It's easier, right? They've been helping our son and all." "What? We never discussed this." "Well, I'm the head of this house, and they've been advising us on it, right? And Mom wanted to live here," he said nonchalantly. "What? What are you talking about? This is supposed to be our family of three's home. There's no room for your parents," I said. "What? What are you talking about? The biggest room on the second floor is fine for me," my father-in-law claimed. "And the room next to it will be mine," my mother-in-law added. They even went as far as to say, "We measured the other day. I wonder if the curtains will fit." Measured? When exactly? I asked Michael. "Wait, have your parents been here before?" "No, they came the day before we did our walkthrough." "What? Why? They wanted to see it, so I gave them the keys to check it out first. Imagine that. My in-laws had seen the house before we did. They had even decided on their rooms, and measured for curtains. I could feel anger rising from deep within me. Why didn't you discuss this with me? This is supposed to be our home, right? And what about our son's room? What? He won't need his room right away. And the guest room is for when we have visitors, right? So it's fine if my parents use it. Didn't I tell you? We're all going to live in the new house as a family. And family obviously includes my parents. Are you saying you deceived me? You're just misunderstanding. I'm the head of this house, so stop complaining. Then, my in-laws joined the argument. What's with this daughter-in-law? Opposing us living here? Presumptuous for just a daughter-in-law. Such an unfortunate daughter. It's only natural for children to take care of their parents. You're part of our family now, so you should take care of us, too. That's a different matter. This house was built with the plan for us three to live in. Even the kitchen was designed with me in mind. Well, that's fine, isn't it? You're the one doing the housework here, right? Being a daughter-in-law means you're supposed to take care of the house, right? So, you're saying you won't do any housework? Of course. Such a noisy daughter-in-law, Michael, if she's going to defy us, just divorce her. My father-in-law finally exploded. Michael also said, don't talk back to my parents. I really will divorce you. So, that line finally came out. So, you do want a divorce, huh? Huh? I couldn't help but burst into laughter. I told my husband, so, we're as good as divorced already, aren't we? Michael and his parents looked shocked, huh? Well, technically, it hasn't been filed yet, so it's just on paper for now. I shoved the divorce papers in front of Michael. Huh? It was the filled-out divorce form from before. What's this? Oh? Forgotten already? You've been threatening me with divorce every day, saying you'd file these papers. I just went ahead and signed them too. What are you talking about? That was a joke. A joke? You threaten me with divorce every day and call that a joke? We're married, aren't we? A little joke like that should be fine. A joke that's actually funny would be fine. But there's no way such threats sound like a joke. Plus, I've recorded all our conversations and threats. Got it all on audio. Huh? I'm taking this to a lawyer and will proceed with the divorce. Hey, what about the house? I wanted to live in this house with you and our son, just the three of us. But it seems you didn't want that. Why don't you and your parents live here? Oh, but if we're divorcing, I'll need the $100,000 I lent for the down payment back right away. And I'll be asking for child support in a lump sum too. I'll be raising our son. With that, I tore open a box. Inside, there was a duffel bag and a backpack packed with the bare essentials for me and my son, prepared for just such an occasion. Yes, I had been waiting for this moment. It turns out my in-laws did intend to take over the house, and my husband was in on deceiving me. In that case, I have no choice but to divorce him. However, given he comes from a family that cares so much about appearances, he probably won't agree to divorce so easily. That's when I got the idea to use the divorce papers Michael had prepared. He must have intended it as a mere threat, but since he was kind enough to fill them out, I decided to go along with it. However, to avoid the divorce being invalidated due to not confirming his intentions properly, I also made sure to record our conversations. He probably thought I didn't have the courage to go through with a divorce. Indeed, divorcing with a young son isn't easy, but I'm not alone. My parents are willing to support me, and more importantly, I can't imagine what living with his family would do to my son. Therefore, separating through divorce is the best option. I took my belongings and went to my parents' house, where I explained everything that had happened. Naturally, they supported me and even said, "You can stay here if you need to." Leaving my son with such parents, I visited a law firm. I showed them the filled-out divorce papers and the recordings of our conversations and asked them to proceed with the divorce. During the week after leaving the new house, Michael called me several times. I didn't want to talk, so I didn't answer, but he left many messages on the answering machine. All of them were along the lines of, "What are you going to do about the mortgage? What are you thinking? Come back home quickly," with no words of apology, concern for our son, or mentions of kicking out his parents. Michael had no intention of ousting his parents even after everything, only worrying about the mortgage. Well, that figures. Michael doesn't have any savings. That's because he tends to spend too much money on his hobbies like gambling and horse racing. Despite plans to save before building our house, the only money available was the $100,000 from my savings before our marriage. To this, Michael nonchalantly said, "My bad, but if the mortgage is in my name, we'll be fine." But I couldn't stand his careless attitude and made him sign a promissory note. It stated that he borrowed $100,000 from me, which he agreed to repay. However, Michael seemed to take the loan agreement lightly between spouses and signed it without much fuss. This document, meant for just-in-case situations, turned out to be unexpectedly useful. When we were arranging the mortgage, my savings were used for the down payment, and the loan was in Michael's name. Though the loan was in his name, he probably was counting on my income as well. I suspect he planned to have me cover all the living expenses after his parents moved in. His parents are likely too stingy to contribute anything to the living expenses. But I'm divorcing, so I don't care about that house anymore. As long as I get back the money I lent and the child support, I'm fine. I didn't want to speak with that family anymore, so I asked a lawyer to handle everything. Of course, I showed them the promissory note Michael signed, fully intending to recover every penny. I was bracing for him to request paying the child support in installments. However, his vain parents said we want to cut ties with such a demon wife as soon as possible, and opted to pay all at once. How will they manage without any savings? They must have borrowed from some shady places at high interest rates. Well, that's none of my business. I later found out that Michael and his family didn't live in the new house but put it up for sale. Without me, continuing to pay the mortgage must have become difficult. Not to mention repaying the suspicious loans. In the end, my moneyless husband and his parents moved into a small apartment. It's a pity for my mother-in-law, who was excited about the built-in kitchen. Well, it was designed to my height, so it wouldn't have suited her short stature anyway. Furthermore, my divorced sister-in-law and her children moved back in with the in-laws. The sister-in-law, who had been a housewife for years, had no intention of working, and her children are middle and elementary school boys. So, 6 people ended up living in a cramped house, depending on my ex-husband's income and the in-laws' pensions. But with Michael chased by loan repayments, there's hardly any room for comfort. I heard the in-laws' house is always noisy with quarrels now that the family has grown, causing complaints from neighbors. The sister-in-law was furious. I came back thinking I'd live in a new house, what's this? And the mother-in-law kept complaining, I want to use a built-in kitchen, live in a new house. My ex-husband went on, if you say that much, I'm gonna hit a big win then buy a house or anything you wish, and more engrossed in gambling, incurred even more debt. Reportedly even dealing with more dubious lenders. Pitiful, really. But all of this is the consequence of a husband who sided with his parents over everything, so it's just desserts. As for me, I've moved into a rental apartment close to work with my son. My parents help with my son when I'm late from work, so I'm at ease. Working hard led to a promotion and a salary increase. I'm saving the extra money to take my son and parents to a hotel for a relaxed vacation. Unlike someone, I plan to make my parents happy and live a fulfilling life, appreciating their support throughout.